This presentation is brought to you by the SDG Decision Education Center.
Hello, and welcome to The Great American Pastime, What Baseball Can Teach Us About Decision Making, brought to you by SDG Decision Education Center and Texas Executive Education at the University of Texas. I'm Lynn Slattery, Director at Texas Executive Education and manager of a portfolio of open enrollment programs designed for busy professionals. This portfolio includes the Strategic Decision and Risk Management Certificate Program, which brings together the academic research and practical application teaching of UT faculty and 35 years of experience in strategy consulting and decision education of SDG, and serves as the basis for this webinar series. We are proud to be partnering with SDG on this series of programs. Today, I'm excited to have Dr. Eric Bickel, an expert in decision quality, here with us to explore decision-making using a baseball case study. Dr. Eric Bickel is an associate professor and director of the graduate program in Operations Research and Industrial Engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. In addition, Dr. Bickel holds a courtesy appointment in the Department of Petroleum and Geosystems Engineering in the Cockrell School of Business. And Eric also teaches for us a lot in Texas Executive Education at the Mouton School of Business. Eric, I'll turn the floor over to you to begin.
Thank you, Lynn, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We thought we'd schedule it for October because, of course, this is playoff season, and I hope you're getting a chance to watch the playoffs, and I hope that if you're not a baseball fan, this might encourage you to do so, and if you are a baseball fan, this might deepen your understanding of the game. I'm going to start out with just a little bit of background on baseball in case you're not an aficionado. I can't make you an expert during this webinar, and really the focus of the webinar is about decision quality, and we're using baseball as a way to teach that. So I'm also going to talk about decision quality. So baseball is a game between two teams. There's 9 players on each team. They're under the direction of a manager, and the manager for us is the decision maker. And we're going to analyze the decisions that they're making during a portion of the game. That portion of the game we're going to consider is called a half inning. An inning is the portion of the game at which the teams alternate on offense and defense, and a team's time at bat is called a half inning. Standard game is 9 innings. We're going to be looking at a half inning, so we're looking at 1/18 of a standard game. The home team, that's the team on whose grounds the game is played. If it's played on neutral grounds, then they make some kind of arrangement. And there's an interesting history around that it wasn't actually a rule that the home team would bat last until the 1950s. It was more of a custom. But now it's a rule the home team always bats last. This is a baseball diamond. We're going to be looking at plays within this. We have home plate. This is where the batter stands. Pitcher, of course, here and is throwing the ball and trying to get past the batter. Then we have first base, second base, and third base. First and third base are completely within what we call the foul line. Second base is actually centered on these two lines. So the baseball diamond's not actually a square. It's kind of an interesting tidbit, but this was a mistake in the original drawings that went back to the late 1800s. They put second base in the wrong place instead of tucking it within the lines, and it's still there today. Now, decision quality has, if you're not familiar with that, the idea here is that we really need to separate decisions and outcomes. And if you're going to do that, how do you quantify the quality of a decision at the time you make it? And we've identified over many years 6 elements of decision quality. The first is you have to have the right frame. You need to know what problem you're trying to solve, what decision you're trying to make. People often skip that step. The second is we need to have creative alternatives. Our decisions know better than our best alternative. So if we have only bad alternatives, we're not going to be able to make a good decision. We need to spend effort coming up with creative alternatives. Relevant and reliable information. This is garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have the right information going in, right data, right assessments, we're not going to be able to make a good decision. Clear values and trade-offs. This is about focusing on what it is we're trying to achieve, what we want or maybe what we don't want. In a corporate setting, that might be net present value, for example. In a baseball game, this is something we'll have to think through. What are our objectives? Then we need to have sound reasoning. This is the analytics, the decision analytics that ties all of these things together. If you think about any decision you've ever made, it has these top three elements. You have your alternatives, what you can do, your information, what you know or don't know, and then your values or your objectives, which is what you're trying to achieve. And sound reasoning, decision analysis, decision analytics is what puts that all together. And then finally, we need to have commitment to action. We need to have a decision-making process that builds in commitment among the decision makers to the appropriate course of action. And we show it as a chain because, like a chain, it's no stronger than its weakest link. If you're missing one of these elements, you're not going to be able to make a high-quality decision. So here's our decision makers. We're going to be looking at a game. It's from 1999. It's a bit dated. Apologize for that. I did some of this work when I was a graduate student and had a little bit more free time to search over many games to find a good example. But this is a great example, so I've stuck with it. The game between the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. At that time, the Braves were managed by Bobby Cox, and then the Astros manager was Terry Collins. And if you've watched any baseball at all, I think it's safe to assume that these guys are committed to action, right? They're really all about action, and it's can we get them to stop for a moment and think about decision quality. What I have here is a decision hierarchy. This shows all the possible decisions that you might think about applying decision quality or decision analysis to in the baseball domain. There are front office decisions. Who should you put on your team? How much are players worth? What kind of portfolio do we want? Do we want a team with a lot of power, or do we want a very fast team? Do we want to invest in pitching, or do we want to invest in hitting? So there's, at this high level, we could make these decisions. We're not actually going to look at those. We're going to focus here on what I would call managerial decisions. These are decisions that are made by the manager on the field while the ball's not in play. Okay. There are decisions that are made by the players while the ball is in play. We're not going to focus on those. So the types of things we're going to look at, whether or not we should try to steal a base, I'll explain what we mean by that, sacrifice, hit and run, or intentionally walk a batter. These are the decisions that we'll focus on. But I hope you'll be able to see how the concepts could be really applied across this decision hierarchy. The steal is a play that tries to advance a runner. So if the offensive team has a runner on first base, for example, we'd like to get that runner over to second base because they're closer then to third and then ultimately to home, in which they would score a run. We'd like to get them over to second base without giving up an out. The offense gets 3 outs, and once they've had 3 outs, they're done batting and the other team comes to bat. So in a steal, when the pitcher pitches the ball, the runner on first tries to run down to second base as fast as he can and get there before being thrown out. If he does that, it's fantastic. We're closer to scoring and we didn't give up an out. Okay, there's defensive tactics that can try to counteract that, called a pickoff and a pitch out. We're not going to look at those in a lot of detail. Next play we'll look at is called the sacrifice. And in this case, the batter bunts the ball. A bunt comes from baby hit. It used to be, it's just a small hit. You try to tap the ball as lightly as you can. And while the infielders are running around trying to get the ball, the runner from first runs down to second base. And usually what happens is then the batter is thrown out at first base. He sacrifices himself for the team, and we've advanced the runner to second base, but we've given up an out. That's considered a success in in the sacrifice case. You're giving up an out to advance a base runner. Now the intentional walk, this is the defensive play. So far we've looked at offensive plays. In the intentional walk, we might have a runner on second base and first base is unoccupied. If first base was occupied and the ball was hit, all the runners would have to run because they're forced by the runner behind them. And it's easier to get runners out when they're forced to run. All you have to do is get the ball to the base before they get there. If they don't have to run, it's harder to get them out. You have to tag them. You have to touch them with the ball. So sometimes the defense will intentionally allow this runner to go down to first base. Okay? So you might do it because of the situation. You might do it to avoid a particularly dangerous batter as well. Now, in order to analyze these different decisions, we need a descriptive model of how baseball works. We want to be making some normative recommendations. Here's what you should do, and that's going to rely on our descriptive model of the game itself and how runs are scored. And I have here a simple influence diagram. What we're trying to calculate, what we'd like to calculate, is the probability of winning given the current situation, given what inning it is, how many outs there are, where the runners are. You'd like to be able to give a probability of winning. What we know is what the current lead is. We're either ahead or behind by a certain number of runs. And what we have to do is build a model that basically goes through how many runs I might score given different situations. And Ron Howard, who's my advisor, did some work on this in a very famous book he wrote on dynamic programming in the 1960s. And I had adopted his model. He gave a baseball example, and I adopted his model as part of this work. It's called the Markov model. The other thing we need is some data on what Ron's model does is it gets us to the end of an inning. Then we need some data. Given we're at the end of a particular inning with a certain score, what's the chance of winning? So given you're up by 10 runs at the top, but at the end of the 8th inning, chance you're going to win is just about 100%. So we'll use some data for that. So we're doing some modeling, and then we're using some data. The result of that is a graph that looks like this. This is, on this axis, this is the home team's lead at the end of an inning. So to the right, it's positive, the home team's winning. And to the left, it's negative, and they're losing. And at 0, the game's tied. And what these graphs are is different innings. This blue diamonds here, this is the first inning. This shows you the probability the home team eventually wins the game given a particular lead at the end of the first inning. So if they're up by 1 run at the end of the first inning, the home team's up by 1 run at the end of the first inning, the chance they're going to win is 62%. If they're up by 2 runs, the chance is 72%, and so on. And then if they're behind, you can see the effect. The model I've built assumes if they're tied at the end of the 9th inning, there's a 50-50 chance that they'll win. Either team's equally likely to win if they're tied at the end of the 9th inning. Okay, you baseball experts will know that's not exactly true. It depends where you are in the batting order, but I think this is good enough for our purposes today. This graph is the 9th inning, and notice it looks very different. If you're up by 1 run at the end of the 9th inning, you've won the game. Okay, if you're up by 2 runs at the end of the 9th inning, you've won the game. If you're up by 3 runs at the end of the 9th inning, you've won the game. If you're down by 1 or more runs at the end of the 9th inning, you're the home team, you've lost the game. Okay, and so what this means is the strategies that you employ early in the game are going to be different than the strategies you employ late in the game. Early in the game, scoring runs is just about the same thing as winning. This may sound circular, but the objective of baseball is to win, not to score runs. Okay? I want to win the game. I don't really care what the score is. And so in the first inning, scoring runs is basically proportional to increasing the chance of winning. Whether I try to maximize the average number of runs I score or I try to maximize the chance of winning, those are the same thing early in the game, except when you get to very high numbers of runs. Late in the game, those are not the same thing. Maximizing the probability of winning is very different than maximizing the average number of runs scored. So therefore, you're going to see different strategies. You're going to see strategies maybe that give up the chance of scoring a lot of runs to maximize the chance of scoring a single run. And so the takeaway here for me, and I hope for you, is that you have to be clear about what your objectives are. Different objectives are going to have different implications for action. I've seen many baseball studies where people lose track of this. There's a lot of work around whether bunting makes sense. And if you just think of bunting as its effect on scoring runs, you don't like bunting, but because it lowers how many runs you score, but it could still increase the chance of winning in certain situations. Okay, and so in business, we've got to be very clear about what our objectives are. Now, if I put this model together that I described 2 slides ago, I get a graph, some data that looks like this. And I have a little icon here for decision quality. We're really talking about reliable information and clear values and trade-offs here. This is the number of outs and the location of the runners on base. And then this axis is the probability the Astros win the game. Okay. The Astros are the home team in this case. This is 0 outs, 1 out, 2 outs. And then this is the way to put runners on base. And the red is the 9th inning, the blue is the 1st inning. So right here, there's 0 outs and nobody on base. The chance the home team wins is 62%. There's none with no outs. If they could get a runner on first, their chance would go up to about 68%. If they could get that runner to second, it'd go up about to 77%. Putting a runner on first base, though, doesn't increase the chance of winning that much in the 9th inning. Once I get a runner on third base, then adding runners to other bases really doesn't help, and in fact, it could hurt. And then you see when we get 1 out, our chance of winning goes down. Graph looks the same. When we go to 2 outs, looks a little bit different, and in that case, having more runners on tends to be better. And then the blue is in the 1st inning. And so you can see for any given base state and any given number of outs, I have a lower chance of winning in the 1st inning than in the 9th inning, which makes sense. But notice in the 1st inning, this continues to go up. So having lots of runners on base in the 1st inning is good, but it may not be good in the 9th inning. Okay, so let's look at how we could use this. Let's say that we have a runner on first base, and we're thinking about stealing, whether we should steal second base. If we were able to steal successfully, we'd go up here. We'd have a runner on second with no outs, and the chance of winning would be about 77%. But if that runner is thrown out when they try to steal, then we'd go to nobody on with 1 out. Okay, and so you can see the risk involved here. And we could solve for how likely would we have to be to steal successfully. If we don't steal, we have a 68% chance of winning. That's just this right here with a runner on first. If we're successful, it goes up to 77%. If we fail, it goes down to 56%. The probability here that would make me indifferent ends up being 57%. If the chance of successful steal was 57%, my chance of winning would be 68%. It would be the same as a steal. So this is a break-even probability. I give the symbol, hit the symbol P star. So if you thought the runner had greater than a 57% chance of stealing successfully, you'd have him steal. If you thought it was less than that, then you wouldn't. So this is how we could use this to analyze the game. Okay, so here's the setup. This is a game between the Braves and the Astros. It was in 1996, July 1996. The score's tied 1-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning. Greg Maddux is pitching for the Braves. Some of you may know of him. He was essentially the best pitcher of this time. He was a 4-time Cy Young Award winner, which is the highest award a pitcher can get. He'd been perfect since the 1st inning. That means he had not allowed a single batter to reach base. Not a single Astro had gotten on base since the first inning. And he's right-handed, okay? And that'll be important. Batter-handedness and pitcher-handedness matters. And so here we've got the score is 1-1. The Braves have 7 hits, the Astros 2 hits. Neither team's made an error. Now the Astros have their pitcher coming up to bat. This is the Astros lineup, 1 through 9. And the batter, what handedness they are. S means they're a switch hitter. They can bat either right or left-handed. This is their batting average. You could think of it as how likely they are to get a hit. Okay, it's not quite that, but you could think about it in that way. This is their batting average against right-handed pitchers, or HP. So a right-handed batter will tend to have a lower average against a right-handed pitcher. It's harder to hit because the balls tend to come into you. It's a little bit harder. And this is their stolen base percentage, how successful they are at stealing bases when they try. And then the Astros have some people on the bench, Barry and Mouton, and the Astros have their pitcher coming to bat. Pitchers are in the major leagues because they can pitch, not because they can hit. And because of that, they tend to, most of them are very poor hitters. And at least, they not at the level they should be hitting in the major leagues. So they're going to pull the pitcher, and they're going to put in Barry to pinch hit for the pitcher. So you'll see that happen when I show you the video. Now, the videos, as Lynn mentioned, they have sound. If you're set up to get sound from the videos, it's fantastic. When I'm playing the video, if you're calling in from your phone or something, you won't be able to hear the video sound. It's okay. You should still be able to watch and keep up. But if you're able to hear, please listen to the announcers. They talk about the decisions that need to be made and what they might do in different situations. It's interesting to listen to the way they talk about it. The 2 announcers are Skip Carey. He was the son of Harry Carey, who's a famous announcer for the Cubs. And he's the father of Chip Carey, who's still currently an announcer. He's really known for his sense of humor. And then Don Sutton, he was my childhood idol. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher, 23 seasons with the Dodgers, Astros, Brewers, Athletics, and Angels. And he's 7th in all-time strikeouts. Okay, so here we are. We're starting out, nobody on. I put a 0 here. This is the first case we're going to look at, the play-by-play. Barry's going to come to bat for the pitcher. And then we're going to analyze what happens throughout the rest of the game. I'm going to show you footage that's courtesy of Major League Baseball. It was originally recorded on VHS. In some places, it's you can tell that it was on tape, but just ask your forgiveness on that. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video, and then I'll be back.
We go to the bottom of the 9th. Maddox has set down 23 straight men, but he's still in a tie game. Sean Barry's going to come out here and pinch hit for Wagner. Barry hampered by a strained left hamstring as well as a bad right shoulder. But he's had a good year. He's hitting .280. Barry, Cangelosi, and Biggio, if anybody gets on, Bagwell. Nobody's been on since the first inning for Houston. That's the frustrating part. Wagner went an inning, 1 hit, 1 strikeout. Low, 1 ball, no strikes. This game just at the 2-hour mark, and we're in the bottom of the 9th.
You can do that when you throw a lot of strikes and you got 2 pitchers who just get the ball and go to the plate.
Line drive, foul again down that right side. This one luckily hits the railing and bounces back onto the field of play.
A lot of pitchers think that their minimum number of laps they have to take around the mound before they throw the ball, but with Wall and with Maddox and with Wagner, they get the ball, go to the mound, make their pitches.
Xavier Hernandez looks like he would pitch the 10th if we get to a 10th. All the advantage now with Houston, they get 2 times at bat for every one for a visiting team when they play at home. There's his curveball, but he missed outside with it. 2-1. In the first, Cangelosi grounded out. Biggio single. Bagwell single. Runners at first and third. Bell hit into a force play. A run scored, and that's been that. And there's a hit. And the winning run is on. Barry interrupts a string of 23 straight, and you've got...
Okay, I'm back. So Barry got a hit. That moves us up to this state, number 1. Barry singles. Now, you can see how important it would be if we could get the runner to second base. Chance of winning for the Astros would go up by quite a bit. Okay, because of that, they're now going to take Barry out and replace Barry with Mouton, somebody who's a faster runner and has a higher chance of stealing successfully. So you're going to see that on the next video segment. Okay, so here's the situation. Okay, now we're talking about alternatives. We have Mouton at first base, Cangelosi against the Astros wins about 68%. There's 3 alternatives. We could either hit away, just have Cangelosi try to put the ball in play, and hopefully we can advance Mouton, 68% chance of winning. We could try to steal second base, have Mouton steal second base. He gets there, our chance of winning goes up to 77. If he's thrown out, it goes down to 56. Or we could have Cangelosi sacrifice. He could try to bunt the ball, move Mouton to second, but give himself up. The chance of winning would be 77%. Failure in this case is generally the lead runner's thrown out. So you give up an out and you don't advance the runner. Okay, so let's look at this trade-off. Here's the steal, which we analyzed before. Either go up to a runner on second, no outs, or down, nobody on, 1 out. And then here's the sacrifice. If we sacrifice successfully, we give up an out and we get the runner to second. Chance of winning goes up by a little bit. Not as good as the steal, but it also has less downside. We have a runner on first and 1 out would be the failure case. The lead runner gets thrown out. And then for me, here we're talking about sound reasoning. And the takeaway for me is that quantitative analysis really can deepen our understanding about the decision and make the trade-offs clear. The sacrifice is a classic safety first play. Steal is riskier. So what should he do? Well, here's a decision tree. This decision has 3 alternatives: steal second, hit away, or sacrifice. If we steal second, we either succeed or fail with this chance of winning in those 2 cases. We can hit away, or we can sacrifice with these chances of success. I've calculated the break-even probabilities for you. Remember, we did this already. You should steal if you thought you had more than a 57% chance of stealing successfully. The sacrifice, you have to have a higher chance of success because the upside's not as good, 78%. But the sacrifice is also easier to execute than the steal. Now, we don't know what Terry Collins' beliefs are about the chances of success here, but these are the break-even probabilities. And another takeaway is what you should do really depends on your beliefs. Different people can have different beliefs about the chance of success in these different cases, and they might make different decisions. Okay. So what we have is a poll. We're going to have a poll for you, which asks, what should Terry Collins do? Okay, he could choose one of those 3 alternatives. He could either steal successfully, hit away, or sacrifice. And we've launched the poll, and I'd like you to reply to make a selection. What would you do in this situation? And then we're going to play the video and see what happens. Okay, we're sharing the poll results. So it looks to me like most of us would have him steal, definitely not hit away, just a small percentage there, kind of evenly split between sacrificing and stealing. Okay, well, let's see what actually happened.
In this situation, of all the people on the Houston roster, The man you would least like to see at the plate if you're a Braves fan is up there now, John Cangelosi. Going to have a pinch runner at first base. Looks like James Mouton. Mouton will run for Berry.
And what you were saying about Cangelosi, for a number of reasons. One, he's a pesky out. He's got a tiny little strike zone. And the other one is he is an excellent bunter. And that's pretty much, you can be pretty sure that's what the Astros are going to do here.
With the killer bees coming up next, you'd be surprised if he didn't. He bunts a line drive to McGriff out there, throw to third, safe, and he threw it away. Let's see if the runner can get to second. He is safe. It's not a sacrifice, but it works out like one. That's an error on McGriff.
Okay, so something happened we didn't even plan on. And if we had more time, thought harder, we could have thought about maybe both runners being thrown out. It wasn't a sacrifice, as they said, because he was he popped up, but it worked out like a sacrifice because of the error. So we moved here. We have a runner on second with one out. Okay, after Cangelosi, quote, sacrificed. Okay, now we've got the killer bees coming up. That's Biggio, Bagwell, and then Bell. They called them the killer bees. Okay, so now we've got Mouton at second, Biggio at bat, and Terry Collins has a decision. Should he have Biggio hit away, try to advance Mouton? Should he try to have Mouton steal third? Then he'd be really close to home. Chance of winning would go up to 82%. Or should he have Biggio sacrifice, where Biggio bunts the ball, Mouton runs to third, but they give up an out? Let's look at that. Here's the steal. A lot of risk. We could go up here, but we could almost go down to 50% chance if we're not successful. Here's the sacrifice. Notice that even a successful sacrifice is worse than hitting away. Because if we give up an out, we go to 2 outs, that's worse than moving the runner over to third base. Okay, so you wouldn't sacrifice in this situation. Here's our decision tree. I'm ruling out the sacrifice. And so I want to see, what do you think? Should we steal third? The break-even chance is 59%. It's a little bit higher than second. Okay, it's much harder to steal third than second. The distance is shorter. Sometimes it depends on if the batter's left or right-handed, but hard to do, hard to steal third base. Or should we hit away? Okay, so here's our decision. Or should we have Mouton steal third, or should we let Biggio hit away? Okay, so look, overwhelming 85% or so. Let's let him hit away. There's a few risk takers out there who want to roll the dice and potentially steal third base. Okay. All right, let's see what happens.
In fairness to McGriff, he had to hit a moving target there, and first baseman doesn't throw the ball very much. Here's Biggio. He is singled, fly to right, grounded to third, so he has used the whole park tonight.
And he is a guy that can spray it all over. I'm not sure I wouldn't be tempted to put him on and take my chances with the next two guys, give you a force play. But he's a guy that's a line drive, scattergun type hitter.
Strike 0-1. Biggio 15 out of 64 lifetime against Greg Maddux. The winning run is at second with 1 out. And they'll send him on virtually any base hit to the outfield because he can fly. Time is called just as Maddux is ready to deliver.
Lemke is trying to keep him close at second, Skip, and what that does is open up an area on the right side of the infield for a guy who is very comfortable inside out with an inside-out swing. See where Lemke is at second?
But I know you agree with me. If he's not there, Mouton's standing at third.
Sure.
1 out. You got to do it.
Heck yes.
A little sacrifice.
All of defensive positioning is a trade-off anyway.
That's right.
And what you try to do is pick out a spot where you think they're most going to hit the ball. And the other thing you try to do is you try to minimize their chances with Mouton. You can't afford to let Belliard dog in there. So this is probably the highest percentage play the Braves can make. There's the puppeteer right there. Guy who moves them around, reads the books, knows the notes.
Now Lemke has moved way off the base, and they're trying to keep him close with Belliard. Into the dirt, gets away, and the runner cannot move up. Thank goodness, Javi. That's the joy of keeping the ball in front of you. The runner's afraid to move when he can see that baseball in front of the catcher.
Good job. Javi Lopez just spreads out. See, he dropped the mitt and formed a barrier there, and all he wanted to do was take a shot off of him. One thing you do when you move Belliard over and move Lemke back away, then you force Biggio to try to become a different kind of hitter. He's a guy who's more comfortable hitting inside out, but now if Belliard's there, you would think most guys would say, well, I must try to pull this, and you make it a little less effective normally.
1-2. Ground ball, right side, Lemke gets there. Close play, got it. And if they don't switch the defense, the ball game's over.
Yeah.
Runner at third, 2 out for Bagwell. Ball wasn't hit that well, but if Lemke's beat it up the middle, the game's over. The ball gets through.
Here's that swing, inside out. All he wants to do is shuffle it over there. Lemke had gone about 8 steps further toward right field. We would be heading for totals and highlights were it not for that move by Jimmy Williams.
Okay, I hope you were able to hear what the announcers were saying. They were talking about defensive decision making and where to position the fielders, and they were congratulating Braves coach for the good outcome after he moved Lemke over a little bit, and then he was able to field that ball. If they hadn't done that, the game would have been over. Okay, they're mixing up decisions and outcomes there, but we'll continue. Okay, so let's look at where we are. We've got now we've got a runner on third with 2 outs. Okay, if you're an Astros fan, maybe you're cheering if you don't know as much about baseball because hey, we've got a runner on third base. Now it's got to be better. But actually, our chance of winning for the Astros has gone down because of that. Worked out like a sacrifice, essentially. It's called a fielder's choice. Okay, so now let's look at a defensive decision. Again, thinking about alternatives. And this is Bobby Cox. Now, Bobby Cox has a decision. We got a runner on third. Chance the Astros wins about 63%. Bagwell's coming up to bat. Okay, Bagwell's a very good hitter. You could pitch to him, or you could intentionally walk him. You could just let him go down to second base and then pitch to Bell. Or you could intentionally walk Bagwell and Bell and then pitch to May. So you could load the bases in this case, and you're hoping for a ground ball or some kind of a force out, or you could just skip Bagwell. Okay. At this point in the game, you're going to see the Braves hold a decision board meeting on the mound. Okay, and they're going to have a conversation, and they're going to talk and try to figure out what they should do in this case. Okay, so let's look at it here. We've got a runner on third. If we had a runner on first and third, the chance the Astros win would hardly change at all. Even if we put a runner on first and then he steals, so we have a runner on second and third, then the chance of winning wouldn't change much at all, because all that matters is that runner on third base. If we load the bases, though, the chance the Astros win is going to go up a little bit, because then if Maddox accidentally walks the next batter, the game's over. Okay, but all in all, it's pretty close. And sometimes decisions are hard just because there's not much difference in the value between the alternatives. And in that case, you should argue, well, let's just make a decision to move on, right? There's very little difference in the value between them. Okay, so here's what we could think about. Pitch to Bagwell. Chance the Braves win is 37%. Walk Bagwell, pitch to Bell. Chance the Braves wins 37. Goes down a little bit. Intentionally walk Bell and Bagwell and pitch to May, and then the chance goes down a little bit to 36%. So what do you think we should do? And we're going to open up a poll here. And we've got 3 choices for you here. Either pitch to Bagwell, or let's walk Bagwell, pitch to Bell, or let's walk Bagwell and Bell and pitch to May. Let's load the bases. So make your choice. About 20% want to pitch to Bagwell, and then kind of equally split between either going ahead and pitching to Bell or loading the bases. Pitching to May. A few more people want to just walk Bagwell. Okay, let's close that, and then let's see what happens.
It's going again.
Now what do you think the Braves will do? They've got Bagwell at the plate, followed by Bell, followed by Derek May. They've got first base open. They've got second base open. The only run that counts is the one at third.
Given my druthers, I would not want to face Derek Bell. I think if you're going to walk Bagwell, then you got to walk Bell also. Because Derek Bell, he's a wild card. He swings at anything. He might take one off his cat bill and hit it down the right field line. Then again, he might take one off the plate and hit it down the left field line. And I just think he is a tougher out. So if you're going to choose to walk Bagwell, then I think you got to walk Bell too.
Well, let's see how they play it. There's a time where I disagree with the umpire. Normally, I'm all for it when they go up to try to speed up a conversation on the mound. But when you're in the 9th inning in a tie game, I think you deserve a little extra time, don't you? You're not stalling for anything, and nobody in the bullpen. They'll walk Bagwell. Normally, you don't want to walk the bases loaded, but with this guy pitching, 14 walks this year in 159 innings.
This is the 16th time this year Bagwell has been intentionally walked. Gary Sheffield behind him with 13. This happens a lot to Bagwell, and also with this walk tonight, he now extends his lead in the National League. Nobody has walked more than he has.
Derek Bell is 6 out of 29 in his career against Maddox. Let's see what they do. Derek May is 3 out of 16. Looks like they're going to pitch to this guy.
This guy scares me.
Okay, so it looks like they're going to go ahead and pitch to Bell. They walk Bagwell. We're going to pitch to Bell. We now have a runner on first and third base. Okay, you're going to observe some further discussions and between Maddox and his fielders. And what he's telling them is, don't worry if Bagwell steals. Don't try to hold him close to the base. Play where you're best able to field the ball. Because even if Bagwell steals and gets down to second base, the chance of winning is really not any different. And so you're going to see Bagwell steal. It doesn't really make any difference. Okay, so here's my question. Did Bobby Cox make a good decision to pitch to Bell? Okay, and this is our poll question. Did Bobby Cox make a good decision to pitch to Bell? Either yes, no, or we can't tell because we haven't seen the outcome yet. So we're passing, the question is, can we pass judgment on Bobby Cox's decision making at this point? He's the Astros manager. So did he make a good decision to pitch to Bell? Yes, no, or we can't tell. So we've got about half of us, yes, that was a good decision. About a third, 30%. No, maybe they wanted to go ahead and walk the bases loaded. I think there could be an argument for that. But about a quarter saying we can't tell because we haven't observed the outcome. Right? And now this is a fundamental decision quality and decision analysis concept. Right? We have to separate the quality of the decision from the quality of the outcome. If you can't do that, all you could tell is people to be lucky. Right? The only way to make good decisions is to be lucky. We know that doesn't make sense. Right? We have to judge the quality of the decision at the time it's made. Bobby Cox's decision is either good or bad right now, irrespective of what happens in the remainder of the game. But most people don't have that concept, right? If the football coach goes for it on fourth down and makes it, then he's a genius. if he misses it, then he's horrible, right? And if he's a genius, they might write a book about him, and there'd be little pictures of him, black and white as he was growing up, honing his football skills, right? But that doesn't really make sense. We got to separate the quality of decision from the quality of the outcome. Okay, let's close that poll, and then let's watch the last segment here and see what happens.
Everybody scares in this spot, but some more than others, eh? Maddox now wants to talk to McGriff. I'm not so sure, but what he's sure that this is what he wants to do.
Well, I'm thinking two things. Number one, where they're going to play him, or number two, is he going to stay way back and say, Bagwell, you want to run, do it. Because he just wants to be sure, but he may be also positioning Fred. We have seen Bell inside out a lot of pitches.
There he goes. Strike, runner at second and third. Doesn't matter. 0-1 the count. The only way it matters now is that if a ball is hit into the hole and Belliard goes and gets the ball, he's got to get a fast runner at first. He doesn't have the luxury of the force out at second.
I still don't like that. Just give him carte blanche, letting him walk there.
1-1. He misses outside.
I would be willing to bet you, as competitive as he is, Derek Bell will put the ball in play. It becomes so much more important now for Maddox to make the pitch and the defense to be where they're supposed to be.
Upstairs, 2-1. This is a spot where Maddox doesn't want to walk him, or he would just go walking, but he's not going to make him. He's not going to challenge him. If he does walk him, he's not going to get overly depressed. Bell has hit into a force play, yet to get the ball out of the infield. Foul tip back. It's 2-2.
Well, there are so many pitchers who would be standing out there now looking into the dugout wondering, what do you want me to do and what should we do? Maddox runs the ballgame. He may be the most qualified guy in this ballpark to run a ballgame in this situation.
There's the winning run, James Mouton at third. There's the guy trying to drive him in, Derek Bell. And the ball game is over. Bell singles up the middle. Maddox allowed base runners in the first. He allowed base runners in the ninth. And Houston wins the game 2-1.
Okay, so here we are. Look at this change in the chance of winning. We had a runner on second and third base, about a 64% chance of winning. And then with that, we jumped all the way up to here. Run scores, Bell drives in, Mouton, and the Astros win the game. Right? I think we could debate, some of us had different views if it was a good decision or not a good decision, based on probably our views of the soundness of loading the bases. But the important takeaway for decision making is we have to distinguish between decisions and outcomes. You can make a bad decision and you can have a good outcome. You can make a good decision and you can have a bad outcome, right? Because the world's uncertain. So here's the highlights from this, just pulling those all together in terms of what it helps us understand about decision making. First thing is you've got to be clear about your objectives. Different objectives are going to have different implications for action. We saw that with the baseball example. Are we trying to win or are we trying to score? Second is quantitative analysis can really, I think, deepen our understanding of decisions and make trade-offs clear. The best course of action depends on your beliefs, and reasonable people can disagree on that. Many times decisions are difficult because there's not a lot of difference in the value of the alternatives. So in that case, it doesn't really matter what you do. Make the decision and move on. And we have to distinguish between the quality of a decision and the quality of an outcome. And so baseball, I think, provides a rich framework for thinking about and teaching decision quality tools and concepts. I've written a paper on this and go through the video, and you can see the link here. It's published in an education journal by the Operations Research Society. With that, I'll say thank you. That's my son when he was a little bit younger, and he's wearing wearing the Astros, and even has a medal. We took second place, so that was an exciting time. So Lynn, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Eric. That was really fun to see kind of how we can use our decision tools in different ways, and having a great opportunity to see that in that baseball analogy was a lot of fun. And so, Eric, I have we don't have a lot of time, but I have a couple of fun questions for you that came in I wanted to just highlight on. Could you take these concepts to the baseball front office to make more strategic decisions? You talked about how we're doing it on the field in real time, but when we have time to think about it, maybe a little bit more in the front office, how can we use those same kind of tools there?
Absolutely. Really, the example I'm going through is fairly operational if you make the analogy to business. And you could certainly apply decision quality concepts higher up in the decision hierarchy. Who should we have on our team? How much are they? How much are they worth? So I think the answer to that's absolutely, and it'd be fun.
Trying to get those ideas to work all the way across, and that's what we're trying to do in our organizations as well. And then the other question, I just have to ask this one because it came in. Have you worked with any baseball teams?
Yes. So a lot of this work came out of work I did in grad school, and I started a company to capture baseball data analytics. This was like mid-90s. I worked with ESPN a little bit, and I eventually sold that to a company called Inside Edge, who does all the analytics for the major league team. So I worked mostly in college. I did talk to the Astros and A's, but this was all pre-Moneyball. We were probably like 5 years too early.
So final question has to be who's winning this year?
I like Astros or Dodgers. I'm a lifelong Dodger, but of course I love the Astros too. So I'll take both right now, and I'll decide later.
Well, I can't let you know for a few more months. That's how mine works. Until everybody's done playing, and then I get a chance to go back and look at how well they did. But to your point, making that decision between what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and focusing on whether it's a good decision as opposed to whether our outcome is good, we don't know that till down the road. So at this point, I wanted to thank you, Eric, for sharing all this information with us, and thank you to our participants for spending time and energy with us. This is all the time that we have for today. We did have some other questions come in we weren't able to get to, and we will answer those offline. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.